Imagine sitting in front of the world. Your most private insecurities suddenly turned into primetime entertainment. That's exactly what happened when Jovi decided to comment on Yara's high school photos. It was supposed to be a light-hearted game, a small moment of nostalgia. Instead, it landed like a punch, sharp and unfiltered, right across her sense of self. Yara's reaction was immediate yet restrained. A tight-lipped smile, eyes darting for support, shoulders slightly tensing. You could feel the discomfort radiating across the room. Friends laughed, but not at the moment itself. They were laughing at the awkward tension that Jovi had created. That's the thing about public humiliation. Even when it's disguised as honesty, it hits differently when your vulnerability is exposed in front of witnesses. And this is where it gets messy. We often hear people say honesty is the best policy. But what happens when honesty is used like a weapon? When your partner decides to expose the parts of you you've been most careful to protect, it stops being honesty. It becomes emotional cruelty, whether they intended it or not. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because we are diving into one of the most jaw-dropping, eye-widening reality TV moments of the season. And I want to know, would you ever let your partner joke about something you've openly shared as sensitive? Comment below, because this moment with Jovi and Yara is sparking a lot of debate. Back to the scene. Jovi, with a casual grin, said Yara's pictures were the worst. He leaned into the joke, oblivious to the fact that Yara had shared her insecurities about her looks growing up. She'd been open about this with friends, family, and yes, even cameras. She talked about her mom making comments about her nose, her body, and how those words left marks that didn't fade overnight. Yara's silence in the moment was telling. She didn't yell, she didn't retaliate immediately, but her pause spoke volumes. It's what happens when the person you trust the most forgets the weight of your past. Even a seemingly small joke can reopen wounds that took years of therapy, reflection, and personal growth to manage. Fans on social media went wild, and their reactions were a mix of sympathy, shock, and outrage. One fan tweeted, "I can't believe he said that on TV knowing her history." Another commented, "Some people think honesty is a license to hurt. This is proof it isn't." These reactions reveal a truth about viewers of reality TV. Empathy isn't automatic. Sometimes audiences cheer for drama without fully processing the emotional consequences for those involved. But this wasn't just about a few online opinions. It was about the long-term effects on a marriage. You see, relationships are built on trust and emotional safety. When one partner targets the other's insecurities, it's not just a hurtful comment. It's a breach of trust. Even if Jovi didn't intend harm, he created a moment where Yara's sense of security within her own home and in her own marriage was compromised. What makes this moment even more complicated is the context. This was not a stranger. This was someone who chose to marry Yara, someone who promised care, love, and protection. And yet, in a split second, those promises felt fragile. Yara's ability to feel safe and accepted was challenged in front of everyone watching. And here's something to think about. When you've shared your pain with someone, when you've allowed them into your most vulnerable spaces, it's reasonable to expect a baseline of care. This moment was proof that even the most intimate bonds can be tested by thoughtlessness. Jovi's comment wasn't malicious in a traditional sense. It wasn't meant to humiliate for cruelty's sake, but it shows how easily thoughtless. Words can cause real damage. Fans on Instagram were quick to point out the double standard in behavior. Many noted that Jovi would casually joke about himself or even brush off sensitive topics when it came to him. But when the spotlight shifted to Yara's insecurities, he seemed oblivious to the emotional stakes. One comment read, "He's fine making fun of himself, but when it's her turn, it's a problem." That's emotional imbalance. Another fan reflected, "This is why therapy and emotional awareness are not optional in relationships. Some people just don't see the impact of their words." This moment also raises a question about accountability. Jovi later shrugged it off, claiming he was just being honest. But here's the catch. Honesty doesn't exist in a vacuum. Context matters. Knowing someone's history and sensitivity should guide how honesty is expressed. You can be truthful without being cruel, but that requires awareness and empathy. Yara's response was subtle, but it was powerful. By not immediately retaliating, she signaled a need to protect herself from escalating drama. That pause is something a lot of viewers miss, but it's essential. Emotional regulation in moments of public exposure is a skill, and it speaks to her resilience. Fans online picked up on it. Many commented on her strength, noting how she handled herself with dignity, even when blindsided by Jovi's remark. But there's a bigger pattern here. Reality TV thrives on conflict, on moments of raw emotion, and unfortunately, that often comes at the expense of genuine emotional safety. This wasn't an isolated incident. Similar dynamics appear across seasons. Partners saying honest things that actually harm, audiences cheering on drama without understanding the human cost, and the vulnerable party left to navigate the aftermath. The emotional premise is clear. When the person who should be your safe space becomes the source of public embarrassment, the consequences ripple outward. You lose trust. You question your own worth. You second-guess whether vulnerability is a risk you're willing to take again. And for Yara, this wasn't hypothetical. It was reality broadcast to thousands, possibly millions of viewers. Now, think about how quickly moments like this spiral. Jovi's comment alone would sting, but the laughter of friends, the reaction of cameras rolling, the social media commentary all added layers of exposure. Every eye in the room, every like or retweet online was a reinforcement of the discomfort. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a public record of vulnerability exploited. And yet the story doesn't end here. Yara's reaction, though restrained, planted seeds for what would follow. Online statements clarifying her feelings, private reflection, and a subtle shift in how the marriage was perceived by viewers. This is where emotional intelligence and maturity come into play. How does one recover when a moment meant to be playful crosses into emotional harm? Can trust be rebuilt after public embarrassment? Fans have debated endlessly. One thread pointed out that Jovi's approach reflects a lack of awareness rather than malice. Another argued that the line between honesty and cruelty isn't just personal, it's cultural. In some social groups, teasing partners about their past or looks is normalized, but that doesn't make it harmless. It's a reminder that the rules of empathy are universal, even if humor is local. It's also worth noting the subtle lesson here. Vulnerability should never be weaponized. Relationships succeed when partners protect, respect, and understand the weight of shared histories. Ignoring that can lead to moments that feel small at first, but echo loudly over time. Jovi's comment is a textbook case. Fans also noticed Yara's immediate micro-expressions. A flicker of hurt, eyes momentarily closing, and a forced laugh. Experts on emotional expression have long said that micro-expressions reveal more than words ever can. And for viewers who pay attention, this silent communication told a story far beyond the joke itself. The room sensed it. The audience sensed it. And it set the stage for the weeks of discussion that followed. Social media reactions continued to pour in, amplifying the tension. Memes surfaced, some mocking Jovi, others showing empathy for Yara. One particularly insightful fan wrote, "The show makes you laugh." But moments like this remind you that these are real people with real feelings. We forget that sometimes. That single line cuts to the heart of reality TV. It entertains, but at what emotional cost? By the end of the episode, the impact was undeniable. Yara had weathered the insult with grace. Jovi remained clueless about the depth of his misstep, and fans were left with a mix of shock, sympathy, and debate. This is where TLC Reality Talk comes in, to examine not only the drama, but the psychology behind it, the behavioral lessons, and the human stakes. And here's where the cliffhanger hits. Jovi thought it was a harmless joke. Yara thought it was a painful exposure. Fans thought it was just another reality TV moment. But what Jovi said next made everything 10 times worse and changed how fans saw their marriage forever. After the camera cut, the room felt heavy. Laughter had died down, replaced by an invisible tension that seemed to hover over everyone. Yara wasn't yelling, wasn't storming out. But her quiet processing spoke louder than words. You could see it in her eyes, a mixture of hurt, disbelief, and a flicker of self-protection. That's the thing about public betrayals. The immediate sting is one thing, but the aftermath is far messier. Backstage, Yara could finally exhale, but the silence wasn't relief, it was reflection. She knew exactly what had just happened. Her vulnerability had been showcased on national television, masked as a joke. And Jovi? He was completely oblivious, laughing off his own comment, thinking he had cleared the air with a grin and a shrug. That's where the danger lies. When one partner misunderstands the weight of their words, emotional damage piles up quietly. Yara didn't react with tears in that moment, but internally, she was cataloging every micro-expression, every laugh from the crew, every subtle glance. Humans have this incredible ability to record harm even when it's not physically inflicted. And Jovi's casual cruelty had been cataloged. Fans were already taking to social media to process the moment. One Instagram post read, "Yara's strength is amazing, but can anyone else see how Jovi completely missed the mark?" Another comment captured the subtle heartbreak. It's one thing to be honest, it's another to weaponize someone's insecurities on national TV. The mix of outrage and sympathy paints a clear picture. Audiences are not just watching reality TV, they're analyzing emotional intelligence in real time. Yara's approach after the moment was measured. She didn't retaliate, she didn't publicly shame him. Instead, she posted a statement expressing how the comment had affected her. In it, she explained that vulnerability is not a game, that exposing old wounds is not harmless entertainment. And this, in my opinion, is the mark of emotional maturity. When someone responds with reflection instead of reaction, they reclaim their power quietly and effectively. Meanwhile, Jovi seemed genuinely confused. He kept insisting he was just honest and couldn't understand why Yara had been hurt. That disconnect is critical. Sometimes people equate transparency with cruelty, and they miss the fact that the truth is context-sensitive. Being brutally honest about something that is deeply personal and historically painful doesn't make you brave. It makes you careless. Yara's silent frustration was compounded by the fact that they had spent years navigating public life together. In reality TV, fans think they're seeing raw, unfiltered relationships, but what they often see is a carefully curated version of human interaction. Even in that controlled environment, the real, raw hurt finds a way through. And in this case, it was amplified by the presence of cameras and a live audience. Fans noticed this tension immediately. Tweets like, "He laughs," "She processes," "This is a textbook case of emotional mismatch," and "Some people think marriage is permission to joke about anything, but Yara just reminded us it's not. We're circulating fast." There's a striking empathy gap here. Some viewers still don't recognize that being in the spotlight doesn't nullify your need for safety. Yara's social media reflections revealed something even deeper. She admitted feeling betrayed not because of a single comment, but because it hit an old nerve. Jovi's words weren't an isolated incident. They tapped into years of past insecurities, subtle criticism, and moments where she had already felt scrutinized. And in my opinion, that's what makes public emotional missteps exponentially worse than private ones. This is where the psychology of relationships gets tricky. When someone you trust most exposes your vulnerabilities, two things happen simultaneously. First, the injured party feels a loss of emotional security. The safe container they believed existed is compromised. Second, the offending partner often misreads the reaction, thinking the emotional hit was minor or exaggerated. This creates a loop: hurt, misinterpretation, and escalating resentment. Yara wisely didn't escalate immediately. She observed, processed, and reflected. But every glance at Jovi reminded her of the disconnect. He remained casual, joking further, while she felt a tightening in her chest. That contrast is emotionally jarring. It's a reminder that empathy is not innate. It must be practiced consistently. And when it's absent in critical moments, even small remarks feel catastrophic. Fans were split on interpretation. Some defended Jovi, claiming honesty should never be penalized. Others argued that intent does not erase impact. "It doesn't matter if he didn't mean to hurt her," one comment read. The damage was done the second he spoke. This debate highlights a key takeaway. In relationships, emotional literacy outweighs blunt honesty. Knowing how your words affect your partner is the difference between connection and harm. Meanwhile, Yara's quiet handling of the aftermath created another interesting phenomenon. She set a standard for self-respect. By choosing not to attack back publicly, she controlled the narrative. Fans noted, she didn't stoop to his level, and that's what makes her strong. And in my opinion, strength in relationships is often measured by restraint and reflection, not volume or theatrics. But here's where it gets complicated. Jovi's obliviousness wasn't malicious, yet it wasn't harmless either. By treating the comment lightly, he inadvertently reinforced a sense of power imbalance. Yara felt exposed, Jovi felt unbothered, and the audience witnessed the tension magnified by cameras. This is the type of dynamic that slowly erodes intimacy, one funny comment at a time. Fans also began drawing parallels to other reality couples. Many noticed patterns where one partner lacks awareness of emotional vulnerability. They observed how similar incidents in previous seasons escalated quietly, leading to resentment, miscommunication, and sometimes public meltdowns. Yara's situation is textbook. Exposure without accountability leads to silent resentment. The aftermath online also revealed something fascinating about public perception. Some fans praised Yara for her resilience, calling her classy under fire. Others criticized Jovi for being insensitive. But beyond judgment, what stood out was the discussion about emotional safety itself. People were recognizing that being in love isn't just about shared experiences. It's about protecting each other's emotional core. Yara's own words on social media underscored this point. She explained that when someone violates your trust, it's not about the event itself. It's about whether you feel safe enough to be vulnerable again. That's a psychological insight many people miss when they watch reality TV for entertainment. And here, the stakes were amplified because her safety was violated on national television. Jovi, for his part, seemed stuck in a loop of self-justification. "I was just being honest," he would repeat, unable to see that honesty without empathy is nothing but recklessness. Fans called this out immediately. One thread read, "He doesn't get it. Honesty without care is cruelty disguised as bravery." Another comment noted, "Yara's response is calm, collected, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. That's emotional intelligence at work." It's also important to note the ripple effect. This single moment of insensitivity didn't just affect Yara's mood. It affected the tone of their interactions for weeks. Private conversations were colored by this incident. Jovi's jokes became slightly off limits, yet his awareness remained limited. And the audience could sense the subtle tension. Yara's silent frustration also highlights a bigger truth. Emotional neglect isn't always obvious. It's often micro, a missed cue here, a thoughtless joke there. And when amplified by cameras, the micro becomes macro. Reality TV is notorious for capturing these moments, and fans often underestimate the real-world consequences of what they watch as entertainment. And yet, Yara's approach set a precedent. By handling the situation with composure, she showed that emotional resilience isn't loud. It's subtle, measured, and incredibly powerful. She didn't lash out, she didn't shame him publicly. She simply reflected, a choice that challenges the audience to consider their own reactions in similar circumstances. Fans kept the conversation alive online. Comments ranged from shock, "I can't believe he said that," to admiration, "Yara is handling this like a queen." Others debated the line between honesty and cruelty, prompting a larger discussion about emotional literacy in relationships. In my opinion, this is one of the most valuable lessons from the incident. Words have weight, context matters, and emotional safety should never be negotiable. And here's the tension point, the mini cliffhanger for this segment. Yara's reflection and Jovi's casual dismissal were just the beginning. Social media had erupted, but the real challenge was yet to come. How would their dynamic evolve when the cameras returned? Would Jovi even realize the damage he had done, or would he double down on his honesty excuse? The room was quiet now, but inside Yara, old memories were roaring. The comment about her high school photos wasn't just a random jab. It was a trigger. Years of insecurities, carefully tucked away, suddenly came alive, flashing back like an unwanted highlight reel. Childhood criticism, subtle judgments, moments. When she felt unseen, they all collided in one sharp instant. This is the cruel thing about unresolved wounds. They're dormant until someone unknowingly, or carelessly, lights the fuse. Yara had spoken openly about her past insecurities before, but seeing them mocked on national TV made them immediate, visceral. She didn't lash out. She froze. Her smile was tight, her laughter forced. Every camera angle, every viewer, every friend in the room seemed like a silent jury, and that's where the real emotional danger lies. Public humiliation turns private pain into performance. Jovi didn't intend to weaponize her history, but his lack of awareness amplified it. His honesty hit with the precision of a scalpel, and while he thought he was teasing, he was actually reopening wounds that had taken years to heal. Meanwhile, fans online were dissecting every micro-expression. "She looks calm, but you can see the hurt in her eyes," one comment read. "He's blind to her pain," wrote another. And here's the thing. The audience's empathy often outpaces the partner's. Reality TV couples are constantly under scrutiny, and yet some of them are the last to recognize their own blind spots. Yara's reflection brings up an important point about relationships. Vulnerability is a gift, not a weapon. When someone you love exposes their insecurities, your role is to hold space, not highlight flaws. Failing that, every joke, every critique, no matter how playful, becomes a seed of mistrust. And Yara's situation isn't unique. We see this pattern over and over in reality TV. Childhood wounds, daddy issues, past rejection, all amplified when a partner dismisses or trivializes them. These are the invisible undercurrents of intimacy, and ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It just ensures they resurface at the worst possible moment. Yara's own reflections on social media hinted at this cycle. She shared that the comment wasn't the only incident, but the one that cut deepest because it publicly exposed her vulnerabilities. She wrote about the tension between being authentic and being scrutinized, and the fine line couples walk when humor intersects with sensitivity. Fans responded in droves, many confessing their own experiences with relationships where jokes crossed into cruelty. Jovi, on the other hand, remained in his mindset of casual defense. He repeated phrases like, "I was just honest," and "I was joking," as though they were shields against accountability. But here's the catch: honesty doesn't exist in a vacuum. When it collides with someone else's trauma, it can wound far beyond what the speaker intended. This moment also ties back to Yara's father issues, which had been hinted at in previous seasons. Abandonment, invisibility, and emotional neglect in childhood shape how we respond to criticism later in life. Seeing a partner mock something you've struggled with for decades taps into a primal fear that the people you trust most might not protect you. And in Yara's case, that fear was validated on TV. Fans quickly noticed the pattern. They commented on how childhood wounds were repeatedly mirrored in her adult relationships. "It's heartbreaking watching her relive this," wrote one fan. "She deserves a partner who protects, not exposes." Another pointed out, "You can see the old trauma in her reactions. Jovi doesn't understand why it hurts so much." These reactions highlight an essential truth. Unresolved trauma doesn't vanish just because we hope it will. It lingers, often waiting for a catalyst like this public moment. Meanwhile, Jovi's obliviousness had a domino effect. His casual demeanor and insistence on honesty over empathy subtly communicated that Yara's pain was secondary. That's the danger of misaligned emotional intelligence. One partner laughs while the other suffers, and the cycle repeats until someone either sets boundaries or leaves. And yet, Yara's response was measured. She didn't explode. She didn't launch an Instagram tirade. She simply reflected and expressed her hurt in a way that preserved her dignity. That, in my opinion, is a masterclass in emotional strength. She acknowledged the pain, allowed herself to feel it, and gave herself space to process without letting it define her entirely. Fans also picked up on a key moment: her subtle, almost imperceptible body language. A tight smile, a glance away, a hand subtly gripping a chair. These micro-reactions told a story words couldn't. Emotional hurt often speaks louder in silence than in screams. And audiences, especially those familiar with trauma, recognize the significance immediately. But here's where things escalate. The same week, another storyline unfolded: Jasmine's pregnancy news. And while Yara's struggle was about emotional safety and humiliation, Jasmine's revealed a different type of vulnerability: the fear of repeating parental patterns. Her history with abandonment and her father's absence added layers of emotional complexity. Fans started drawing parallels between Yara's exposure and Jasmine's fear, noticing a recurring theme. Unresolved trauma surfaces in moments of relational stress, especially when family and public scrutiny are involved. This is where reality TV becomes both entertaining and painfully insightful. It's not just about who said what, it's about how past wounds intersect with present behavior. Jovi's careless humor didn't exist in a vacuum. It activated Yara's long-standing fears of judgment, invisibility, and abandonment. And watching that unfold, fans could see why some relationships never recover from one careless moment. Jasmine's storyline adds a mirror for Yara. While Yara wrestled with past trauma triggered by a partner's words, Jasmine was grappling with generational trauma, fear that her child would inherit the same vulnerabilities she endured. Both women's stories converge around the same theme. When emotional wounds are dismissed, ignored, or mocked, they resurface with double intensity. This is why emotional literacy is critical. A partner's failure to recognize triggers doesn't just hurt in the moment. It reinforces patterns of distrust, shame, and defensive behavior. Fans online noted, "This is more than reality TV drama. It's a lesson in how not to treat the people you love." Another wrote, "You can't just say, 'I'm honest,' and expect that to excuse emotional damage." That's the real takeaway. Yara's measured approach created a quiet tension for future episodes. She had the power to confront or disengage, but she also held the emotional high ground. This created a suspenseful narrative because viewers knew one thing: Jovi was still unaware of the depth of her hurt. Every glance, every interaction, every playful comment had potential to reopen the wound. The psychological insight here is clear. Trauma amplifies everything. A joke that might slide in a casual relationship lands like a punch when filtered through years of abandonment, criticism, and insecurity. Yara's response, reflective, silent, controlled, is a textbook example of resilience. But the audience knows, and so does Jovi eventually, that unresolved microtraumas accumulate and shape long-term relational dynamics. Fans were vocal about this. Many shared their own experiences, noting how small, seemingly harmless comments in relationships escalated into long-term distrust. Others sympathized with Yara, emphasizing that empathy is the key differentiator between loving support and casual cruelty. And that feedback loop is crucial because it shows viewers that emotional awareness isn't just entertainment. It's actionable life advice. Jovi's lack of insight became more glaring with every social media thread. People dissected his behavior, noting patterns of obliviousness and failure to hold space for Yara's vulnerability. And here's a subtle but powerful observation. When one partner consistently misses cues, it's not just about the immediate hurt. It's about how it teaches the other person to protect themselves preemptively, creating emotional distance over time. Meanwhile, the cameras captured every nuance of Yara's silent processing. Viewers could see the cognitive and emotional gymnastics she performed, recognition of hurt, self-soothing, and strategic containment. This is why reality TV, when watched with attention, can reveal authentic human psychology, the tension between internal processing and external interaction, and then another layer unfolded,